Hello, excuse me folks, I'm going to make a quick announcement. I made a huge mistake just a few minutes ago. The link to the live stream I had to change as I was testing the live stream. I ended it, and once you end it, you can't restart it. So I had to recreate it, and I sent out an e-blast with the new link. If you would please, if you have people that you know are watching live, text them or talk to them. It was my fault, purely an accidental thing. It's kind of the first time we're setting this up like this, but from now on, we'll be able to have a little bit more of a professional live stream with the sound going through the board. And again, that's my fault. I apologize for that mistake. And if you could just tell everybody that you know that might be watching, we resent the link. And if they go to our channel, I think if they click the old link, it will take them to our channel and they'll find it anyway, hopefully. So again, I apologize. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's after 3 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and start the meeting. They say it needs to be louder. Test 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me okay now? Good afternoon. This is the much anticipated question and answer session on the draft covenant proposal. At this table is the covenants committee and a couple of board members, 3 board members. I'm the chairman, Davis Dalton. This is Carolyn Henry. And Joe Brandhuber and Ron Duncan, who are members of the Covenants Committee. And you all know John Stern and myself are board members, and Jimmy Mace, who is also the ACC inspector. So anyway, I thought I would start with a few remarks, and so if we could start the slideshow. This won't take long, just a little introduction. Okay, next. Background. The current Unified Covenants were adopted in 1994. Then in 2017, 2018, an update to the Unified Covenants failed to be adopted on procedural grounds, so we're still using the 1994 Covenants. In May of 2022, the board formed an ad hoc Covenants Committee to amend the 1994 Covenants. Next. Is that number 2? Okay. As we've had several wildfires in our immediate area in recent years, it's highlighted the need to reduce the risk of wildfire devastating our community. Substantial federal grants are available in the millions of dollars for communities that have adopted a formal program for controlling the risk of fire and the ability to continue that program on. The ACC has been attempting to reduce fire risks in the area, and the pushback that we have received kind of highlighted the need for greater clarification, hence the standards were placed in the covenants, and for stronger enforcement language in the covenants. Next. There's been numerous member complaints to our board regarding problems with short-term rental properties. The most numerous complaints to the ACC over the years have been regarding short-term rentals. That was only, it was moved into second last year because the Firewise concerns took number 1. So for the past 20 years, the Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club boards have been considering disallowing short-term rentals, and this has been repeatedly resisted by rental property interests, including threats of lawsuits. Next. The major changes in the new covenants from the 1994 covenants are the addition of community fire prevention program, better definition and enhancement of the enforcement provisions, addition to membership requirements, and the phase out of short-term rentals. Next. The intent is to significantly reduce wildfire risk to structures. This Fireways covenant is consistent with National Fire Protection Association guidelines. The ACC is responsible for enforcement of it, and if it's not community-wide, it won't be effective. Next. In the enforcement provision, the easement granted to the club to enter upon property after notification and a meeting arranged at the property, except in an emergency, for inspection of exterior areas when covenant violations are suspected but are unable to be sufficiently observed from the street. That's new. The authorization for the club or an authorized agent as a last resort to enter onto property to cure serious covenant violations, and the addition of interest penalties for fines not paid after 30 days. Next. The membership requirements, addition of lot compliance with community fire prevention covenant. Transfer of lot ownership cannot be completed without compliance with community fire prevention guidelines. And the burden of compliance is upon the seller unless a written agreement is filed at closing between the buyer and the seller, delineating who is responsible for curing the violations. Next. Short-term rentals. The existing covenants do not address short-term rentals. The Covenants Committee and the Board have offered a compromise solution in the 10-year sunset provision after a lot of comments after the original draft that had a 1-year sunset. The major pushback from the property owners who rent in the real estate industry, instead, can't we just regulate short-term rentals? Much easier said than done. So, how do we adopt the new covenants? Well, you've seen the first step is to write them, get feedback. The adoption protocol has been established per court proceeding. Lots that are now subject to the 1994 covenants will be eligible to cast a ballot. Each eligible lot will get one ballot, one vote. A ballot is actually, it's not a vote, it's not a ballot, it's a covenants acceptance instrument which must be notarized. And ballots cast will then be a legal instrument and they're irrevocable. Next. So the total number of eligible votes will be the denominator. That's the total number of lots that are subject to the 1994 covenants. The total number of lots with yes ballots will be the numerator. So then if you divide the yes ballots by the total number of lots times 100, you get a percentage. And a simple majority, more than 50% of those lots voting yes, will result in adoption. Anything less, they won't pass. Next. So, what I'd like to announce today too is that the Board of Directors has arranged for a survey of the members to go out with the Board of Directors election ballots for the annual meeting, June 24th of 2023. So the questions will be designed to ascertain the will of the membership regarding short-term rentals, fire prevention, the enforcement provisions, and maybe more. Next. Now we're ready for questions. The microphone in the middle. Caleb, your question?
Just
My name's Don Lidkey, and I don't have a dog in this fight, but I got a question. When, in any presentation, when you use the word numerous or many or a lot, how many is that? You said numerous complaints have come before the ACC. Is that 10, 30, a million? How many?
In 1 year or over the years?
I don't know, it's your presentation, I was just asking a question.
Well, numerous is correct, but if I don't have numbers,
Okay,
right now we're a little short-staffed in administration, and the person that I would normally ask to give me those numbers is out
okay.
for medical reasons.
So the numbers that you used, goes to the ACC, does that go through the zoning guys too? Because I asked
That goes to ACC, doesn't go to the zoning.
okay, so because I asked the zoning guys a question this morning. There's 104 permits and there were 3 complaints last year that were resolved.
I think people have realized that there's no point in complaining to the zoning commission.
I'm just asking a question, I'm not complaining.
I know, but I'm just answering it.
All right, you have a comment, John?
The president would like to add
Okay,
something.
fine.
Most of the questions or complaints don't go to zoning or ACC. We have been referring complaints to go to the sheriff, and a great number of complaints overwhelmingly compared to ACC and zoning go to the sheriff. We have not verified the numbers, but our manager spoke to the sheriff on an unrelated issue the other day and was told by one of their staff that they get about 50 complaints per week from Alto. It's not been verified yet, but let's say,
Alto Lakes?
yes, if that is true and is verified, take 20% of them that might refer to short-term rentals. You can do the math, that's 500 a year. So we can't quantify them because we have not gotten definite information from the sheriff
right.
or ACC.
Okay, I'm just asking the numbers, so
Yeah, that's what I
appreciate
wanted
it.
to tell you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I know a lot of people in this room have heard the phrase, "Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater." Well, that's what I think that we are attempting to do in this situation. No one disagrees that short-term rentals can be a disruptive nuisance, and undoubtedly we have a few of these every year. We hear a lot about the awful renter who's destroying the quiet, private community that we live in. But really, who is most of the property rented to out here in this neighborhood? I don't know if you know, but there are 2,280 memberships in this community as of the end of 2022. And of those memberships, 967 of them are membership lots, meaning 967 members. For those of you who want to do the math, that's 42.4%. Of our membership doesn't have a bed to sleep in or a place to stay when they come out here to enjoy the use of this community. If you eliminate all short-term rentals, how are those property owners supposed to exercise their rights to enjoy the unique and wonderful amenities that this community has to offer? In addition, what kind of economic impact will it have if we cut those people out? They're the ones who rent out here seasonally. They come in and they stay a few weeks in the summer, and they come for holidays, and they bring their children and their families, and they enjoy this community. How many concert tickets and dinners and bottles of wine and, expensive rounds of golf will we lose if we do that? How about the 1,313 members who do own a home here? The majority of those homes are just like mine. They're 3 bedrooms or less. If I want to have all 4 of my adult children and their families out here, that's 16 people. I can't sleep 16 people in my home. So me, lots of other people out here, we take advantage of those short-term rentals to use for our families in the summertime and around holiday periods, birthdays, anniversaries, when they come in to visit and to enjoy this community. Now, back to my question, are we throwing out the baby with the bathwater? Yeah, those 967 members and those renters, those owners like me that don't have enough room in their homes for their families, that's the baby we're throwing out with the bathwater. You've also heard the phrase, "Don't cut off your nose to spite your face." Well, in 2022, there were 117 residential sales in this community. This is down from 21 a little bit, by the way, and also down from 20 a little bit. But the club has still collected over $700,000 in transfer fees as of last week. And our fiscal year doesn't end for, 8 or 10 more weeks. So we'll collect some more. It'll be around $750,000 would be my guess. Now, I have personally sold nearly $8 million worth of property in 2022 in Alto Lakes. That doesn't count the rest of the county, but in Alto Lakes. I have not sold one single home in this community to a person who hadn't lived around here for a few months, rented around here, or stayed with friends. This is not the kind of community that sells itself on the internet. People come out here, they stay with their friends, or they rent a home and they enjoy it and they fall in love with the place, and then they buy a property. So at a time when our club is stretched to the limit financially because of rising costs that are out of everyone's control, do we really want to implement a policy that might reduce the number of transfer fees that this club is collecting every year? We're relying on them now. We're living on transfer fees. It's budgeted in this year's budget. It's budgeted in next year's budget. I don't think that we can ignore the fact that if you cut out people's ability to, quote, come out and try out our community, you're going to jeopardize the number of sales that you're going to get. Now, one more thing, I've heard your comments today, and a lot of other board members, at least more than one, have said to me that, well, we're just going to take it to a member vote or take it to a survey and let the members decide. And I'm fine with that. I would like for us to take it to a member vote. But I don't want you to send it to a member vote or to a survey unless you give full and complete information to all of the members and all of the potential voters about the possible adverse consequences of this policy. All we're hearing is the positive effects of this policy. And I agree, we're going to get rid of a few spring breakers and a few bachelor parties and things like that, maybe a few motorcycle clubs, and they are negative impact on short-term rentals. But once again, the overall effect might be more detrimental. We all know this club carries D&O insurance. Every year it has to be renewed, and every year it gets higher. A few years ago, the deductible on our D&O insurance was $10,000 per incident. So that means if the club got sued, it cost $10,000 per lawsuit out of pocket, and then the insurance would kick in and pick up the rest of the coverage. Now that D&O policy has gone crazy expensive, and the out-of-pocket deductible is $25,000. So if we have 10 lawsuits filed by property owners who have lost their right to rent out here, what is that? That's $250,000 out of pocket that we will spend of our money, our dues that we pay to the club. That money will get spent regardless if you win the lawsuit. And if you lose the lawsuit, you could have damages in addition to that out-of-pocket expense on each deductible. The other problem with that is, if we had that many lawsuits filed against us, we might not be able to get D&O insurance at all. And I know that's an issue that has been discussed. I'm not a fan of saying let's regulate or make policies based on the threat of lawsuits, because frankly, most threats of lawsuits are frivolous. Most people write threatening letters, but they never get around to filing suit. But in this particular case, this elimination of short-term rental policies will adversely affect people who have put their property in 1031 exchanges, people who have put their property in rental pools while they're trying to pay it off before they retire. Those people will have actual damages, and they will not be afraid, in my opinion, to sue. And if you send this out to a member vote or a member survey, it is your duty as board members to advise every person that has a vote or has a right to answer that survey to be aware of these negative impacts as well. Back to what Mr. Dalton said earlier, instead of eliminating, let's regulate. Make sure all rentals go through the permitting process with zoning. Increase the permit fees. Make it easier for neighbors to report a problem. Enforce the rules. I know we have no staff to enforce that, so that begs the question, why make a policy that we don't have the staff to enforce? But we don't at this point in time. But we can impose fines. And we can make sure that violators suffer negative consequences. You know, if I have a little dog and I don't want him to sit on the couch, and he jumps up there and I swat him and put him down, second time I swat him and put him down, but the third time I'm in the mood to cuddle, and so I just let him sit there, what if I taught the dog? Keep trying. That's what a policy like you're trying to affect that's what will happen, because if we don't find these members that have the properties that are violating, and that's been the policy in the past, it's the same thing with dead trees on the lots and every other complaint, noise complaints that we get from owners, not just renters. But the board has had a very inconsistent record of enforcing the violations. In fact, the violations end up with very few negative consequences. So if you're not willing to hire the staff to enforce it and not willing to make the hard decisions about giving consequences, then no matter how many amendments you write, it will make absolutely no change. All you'll do is create an underground market where these rentals will continue to exist without any regulation. Questions, anybody? Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody, fellow members. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a second. Well, you brought up several things. Wasn't just a question, but I'm going to have to ask people to try and keep it to 5 minutes or less, or we'll never leave today. But we do understand that if short-term rentals go away, that is an issue for people who are already renting, planning to rent, need to rent. That's why we thought the 10-year sunset was a nice compromise, because 10 years is a long time to make your plans to go a different direction. If you're trying to pay it off in 10 years or speed up the payments a little bit. And as far as the lot owners that don't have a home, I don't know how many of those rent short-term within Alto Lakes. I don't have those statistics, do you? But over the 10 years, from the time the covenants are adopted until the short-term rental ban goes into effect, a lot of things can be done to accommodate those people without having to go down to Ruidoso or some other place to have a place to stay, someplace close, so that they don't have to maybe spend the night at the club and then drive somewhere, maybe not in the best condition to drive. So yes, the board is already thinking about that. As far as sending out a survey with no information, pro and con, we wouldn't do that. But is the information that I put out, pro and con, going to satisfy everybody in this room? I doubt it. But we were intending to do that. Transfer fees are an important part to the financial operation of this club. And is there going to be maybe a short-term drop in transfer fees if these new covenants are actually adopted? Perhaps, but I think this community, Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club, is a very attractive place to buy a home, even if you're not planning short-term rentals. I don't see the entire demand for homes here going away because there's a covenant against short-term rentals. Does anyone else want to say something?
Yes, there's one other thing that just isn't being considered out here. We have now 104, I think someone said, short-term rentals. Every one of those owners has a vote here as a member, which is fine and as they should be. But what may happen here if we allow short-term rentals to get out of control, and what is happening in other parts of the country, is that sometimes these big conglomerates like Blackstone are seeing a deal and they're coming in and buying groups of houses. What's the negative about that? These people get a vote for the club, and our club now is a private club. If we end up later down having 500 rentals, there will be 500 votes out there. And if these are renters from outside the county and are not people who come up here for part of the year, what's going to happen? They're going to want their tenants to be able to use the club, and they'll be coming up and using our golf courses and our pickleball courses, and it'll no longer be a private club. It will be a semi-private club. Sue's looking at me like, you don't know what you're talking about, but that has happened in many parts of the country.
It's happened, John, because they don't regulate it. Our club, our board, including you, you've been proactive about that. You have eliminated the unaccompanied guests on the golf course. You've eliminated the unaccompanied.
Sue, you're missing the point, because if these people get enough votes and enough memberships, they can change the rules we have here, and that's what I'm saying.
You're right, if they could get a simple majority.
If you get 500 rentals here, that's 25% of the
They won't
population.
get 500 rentals here because it's not economically desirable when the people they rent to initially can't use the club.
Then what-
As long as the club stays, the board stays firm in their policies not to allow the unaccompanied use of the courses and the club facilities and our concerts and restaurants, then there's no incentive for those big hospitality conglomerates to buy us up.
I love Sue, but I do not agree with her.
That's right.
If they own, they have a vote. Every year, we elect 3 if you own property, you get a vote. Every year, we vote for 3 board directors. Given a change in the composition of the board directors, administrative policy can be changed. How can we prevent that? I mean, that's a function, one of the functions of the board. The second thing is on the 900 and some odd empty lots, you can speculate, what you're speculating is that that people who own those lots come up here on short-term, over a long weekend, or 4th of July week, or Labor Day. I respect your right to speculate, and you have that right, but that doesn't mean it is factually correct. I mean, hold on. I think the decision that a lot of us are facing is what kind of community do we want? All right? And if we want the type of community that many people have told me, we need to put into the covenants the types of restrictions that preserve this community. So it's not a question of, am I for or against Firewise, or am I for or against short-term rentals? The question each of us as a lot owner has to ask ourselves is, what type of community do we want? And then base our vote on that.
Next question.
Thank you for having this meeting so we can come forth and express our opinions. I'm Diane Belote, and I've been a member, very happy member of this club for almost 14 years. My question today kind of deviates from short-term rentals for a while. It's on page 3, where all of the subdivisions, and if you notice on the proposed covenants, it says certain subdivisions in this area. Okay, my question to you, my first, and this will lead into other comments. How were these subdivisions listed? Where did they come from? Because I live in Deer Park Valley. Deer Park Valley is not a part of the 1994 covenants. Only Unit 7. Do you know how many that excludes? That excludes 233 other property lots. So that's not true that everybody that owns a home up here has a vote on all of this. Now, are you going to include us or are you not? So, and Ron, would you? Okay, a unit is really what it says.
Okay, if you're not in a unit,
Yes.
that was brought in under the unification of the individual subdivision covenants in 1994.
Okay, we're still operating under 82. I have.
You're operating under those covenants.
Yes, sir.
That Alto Village, Don Blogren's development company,
Yes.
put in at the time that property of yours was subdivided
And
and
there
put
are
up for sale.
also properties in Deer Park Meadows.
None of the
Those are the
none of the
two.
condominiums, none of the townhomes are subject to the unified covenants.
Okay,
There are properties in Deer Park Meadows
right.
that are not subject to the unified covenants.
7 through
So
21.
to answer your question, yeah, balloting can only go to those properties that are subject to the covenants.
Okay.
Those properties not subject will not be voting and will not be under any other restrictions if these covenants pass.
Right, and
So
I-
you're absolutely correct.
And I don't know if you thought about that.
Yes, we
because-
did think about that, but we don't
Okay.
have any real choice
Okay.
in
Because-
how to attack any of those other properties that are not
Right.
under the unifieds.
Right. And so if I'm hearing, even if this passes legally this time, we are not going to be a part of it, and we don't have to follow any of them.
You're absolutely right.
All right.
That's
my
you're,
question.
You're right on.
So
yeah.
you need to think about that. Because there are a lot of properties, 233,
Yeah.
that are not included. That's just in Deer Park Valley.
That's correct.
In Deer Park Meadows, there's something like, I think, excluded or, and I've got all the numbers here.
Yeah.
But you're talking a lot of units that aren't going to be under these covenants.
Nor have they been, Diana, nor have they been over all these years.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we're still hearing all of this from the club. So I just wanted to make sure I had it correct.
Yes, you do.
Because I work with people that want to buy homes here, and the club is not sending out the correct information. I just sold a home next to me, and it did not give the correct covenants. So that needs to be corrected.
Yes, I would agree with that.
You've got to
yes.
have full disclosure, and be upfront with people coming in here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did I get turned? Oh, I'm pretty loud. My name's Stacy Barr. My husband Mark and I have been here 3 years. But I don't have a dog in this fight either. But we did, I'm reading a letter from a friend of ours that came and visited us this summer and bought a home up here. She could not be here, she works. Members of Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club, my husband Justin and I purchased a home in October of this last year. We visited a friend this last summer and fell in love. We bought a property in an LLC with the goal of renting it once or twice a month to help us pay for it so that one day we could retire in Alto. Our plan was to rent to members of the club that currently do not have a home in Alto but need a place to stay when they're in town to use the facilities. I mean, where the owners of the goat lots stay. Why in the world would the club stop them from using other members' homes? Does it not bring revenue to the club? And what is wrong with the members that cannot afford a house in Alto? When they rent members' homes, do they cause problems? I cannot imagine that there are wild parties happening from these members. I wrote this letter to tell you of my experience with HOAs and short-term rentals. I'm a Texas broker and I own a real estate company in West Texas. I've been in real estate for over 20 years. I purchased a home in Horseshoe Bay in November of 2019. We originally intended to retire on the lake until we made our way to Alto this summer. Then we purchased our townhome. Short-term rentals were allowed at Horseshoe Bay. Then they changed. To make a long story short, this is where we are now. The members of the HOA at Horseshoe Bay that were renting their property have all gone in together and filed suit against the same said HOA. I am not certain of how many lawsuits there actually are, but there are over 100 properties in our HOA. Our HOA is now filed suit against some of the property owners because they have ignored the new rules and are renting anyway. So when you break this down, I am a member of the HOA, so when the owners sue the HOA, all members are being sued, and when the HOA sues homeowners, then essentially I'm suing homeowners even though I agree with them. This is a giant mess. I beg of you, leave these homeowners alone. If you have a problem with a property that is renting and not following the rules, then shut them down or revoke their permit, not the entire Alto population. Short-term rentals can be used in a good way. We can help our current club members have a place to stay, and we can accommodate members' families when they come to visit. Thank you for your time. Leslie L. Rodhops.
Is your name it? There it is, brother. All right. Yeah, I might stroll around. Mr. Higgins, here you go. Thank you. I'm Frank Higgins. My wife and Karen and I have lived here full-time for 23 years. And we know at least 4 couples who had to abandon Alto because of the noise from next door rentals on either side of their home. We have to realize that when not that every group is a wild group, probably only 15% of them, but if they're in your bedroom, it's really disconcerting. We're seeing examples all around the country of short-term rentals causing a problem. Look at Sedona. They may look at Sedona lately. It's a beautiful place, just like we have a beautiful place. But now, Sedona had to close their elementary school because it had no children coming through. The population shifted to whereas nightly rentals took up so much of the real estate that they didn't have to provide services to the children. The children were gone. They got forced out. So I think it's kind of a slippery slope to try and not put a limitation on nightly rentals. They need to be controlled. I think that stopping whenever this ordinance comes into play, if they would stop, excuse me 1 second. If they would look at the rules and regulations, someone who comes up here to rent for 3 nights, they don't care what the rules and regulations are. You can post them all over the house. We have the ordinance, the ETZ says only 2 people per bedroom. When some of these motorcycle guys are up here, not only offense to motorcycle guys, but when they come in big groups, it's the way they travel. And they start partying, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and the sheriff is, an hour and a half away, if he ever shows up. What do we do? Sue, do I call you at 3 in the morning and you come over and take care of it? Anyway, I strongly hope that we can limit nightly rentals as much as we can. There are other examples around the country where nightly rentals have ruined what people had. I came here and bought a single family home 24 years ago, and I've lived here 23 years full time. And I just want to leave that thought with you.
Thank you very much. Before you start, there was a questioner that said we did not give full disclosure to people in the community that are not subject to the covenants. It's true, we sent the covenants out to all the members. We thought we wanted all the members to know what was going on, to know about this information. We didn't say, well, everybody's going to be subject to these, and they won't. Well, the subdivisions that are not under the covenants for 1994 could be, if these covenants are adopted and those subdivisions want to be, they have their own internal mechanism to vote themselves in. It's strictly with that subdivision. It doesn't really have anything to do with Alto for them to make that decision, but we're not trying to rope anybody in on anything. And if you're selling somebody a property and they want to know, are we subject to these covenants or not, then whoever's selling the property needs to have full disclosure to that buyer. Next question.
My name, excuse me. My My name is Yvonne Linelli. I've been a member since 1985. I want to applaud the board and thank you very much for your FireWise provisions. I have been a member, was formerly a member of the Nita Volunteer Fire Department. I retired after 20 years service as Assistant Chief. I can't obviously tell you how many fires we responded to in Alto Village, and I am thrilled beyond words that you are doing something about the FireWise. I hope everyone will heed the provisions, because it will make our neighborhood so much safer, and it will save our property. Thank you.
Much, Yvonne. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Kai Brown. I'm a full-time resident here, and short-term rentals are driving me away, and I thought I'd share that with you. The house next door to me is being rented to be a short-term rental. It has 7 bedrooms and 6.5 bathrooms. That means that 14 people, if they abide by the rules, 14 people will be having a college ski weekend next door to my house. 10 years doesn't help me. I won't live long enough for 10 years to expire short-term rentals. This is my retirement home. I like the peacefulness. I like the full-time neighbors. I love to have the summer residents come and renew friendships during the summer. But this past summer, there were 3 instances on my street and Frank Street, there were 3 instances on Deer Park Drive of short-term renters doing horrible things in our neighborhood. We watched them drive so fast on Deer Park Drive that they killed deer in front of my home and in front of their home. We had a short-term rental come out with a butcher knife because he wanted to cut off the head and take the antlers home. That's the short-term rental experience that I had. And I'm telling you, there's no peace, absolutely no peace. Where there used to be in the neighborhood, it was quiet, there were things to do, it was mostly retired folks, but short-term rentals destroy it. 4 doors down, we had 11 motorcycles this past summer. Now, one thing that could happen is that there could be some kind of regulation so that a 7-bedroom house couldn't be a short-term rental. Make a 7, I loved it when the first iteration came out and it said that it had to be 30-day rental. Fine. People don't come for college weekends on a 30-day rental or family reunions. And I don't feel obligated to provide housing to family members who have homes so small they can't accommodate their family. When I have family members come and I can't accommodate them, I don't look for places in Alto. There are plenty of places in Ruidoso where they can stay and enjoy themselves. And I just wanted to share with you that personally, short-term rentals are killing my retirement because I cannot abide by a house next door with 7 bedrooms and a short-term rental pool. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name's Jill Warren, and I would just like to affirm what Mr. Higgin said. This morning I Googled how short-term rentals ruin neighborhoods. There's article after article after article. Santa Fe has put a cap on short-term rentals. Taos also has put a cap on it. I think Las Cruces has. And Sedona came up. The city is offering a stipend of $10,000 to property owners to rent their home to locals. And out of the thousands of short-term rentals they have, 3 people have come forward. So it says that the short-term rentals are ruining neighborhoods, they're ruining the character of communities, and there's nothing you can do about it if you don't stop it before it gets out of hand. Our experience with short-term rentals, the house across the street is a short-term rental. We were remodeling our home, and they killed an elk, and they butchered it and threw their elk parts in our dumpster. And our construction people saw that. We've had loud noise going on. One home had, I think, 18 college kids coming out and about 8 cars parked around the neighborhood. 109 Crown Ridge. Just since we've been there the last 3 years, we purchased it in 2019, there's been multiple houses that have turned into short-term rentals. So when we purchased our house, we did not know, we thought we were going to be in a quiet country club, not a rental resort. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Some of you know me, some of you don't, some of you don't care, but I'm Frank Higgins' wife. One of the things that he omitted was that when we retired up here, we became real estate agents for some 10 to 12 years. And during that time, we would often talk to people, prospective buyers, who thought, maybe I could rent my property out from time to time. And at that time, before nightly rentals became the thing, you could, with fair degree of confidence, tell your potential buyer that you can maybe rent it out 60 to 80 nights a year. And then people could run the numbers and see if that made sense for them to do. Now, with the short-term rental proliferation all over the globe, and it's not just here, it's in places like Paris, France, Amsterdam, the list is endless. People are finding that they need to take a real hard look at enforcement. And one of the things I think would be the best tool for enforcing is to live by septic permits. Septic permits are required to state how many bedrooms are allowed on an individual property. So if your septic permit, any of you folks' septic permit shows 4 bedrooms, that means 8 people can be housed. Not 10, 12, or whatever, because you're gonna let people sleep on the couch or in some sort of pack, baby thingy. And the state of New Mexico has enforcement provisions with septic permit violations. And I would like for people to think about that. And I think that that should be part of any kind of permitting process, because I know in some communities, and I looked this up, septic permits, because most of this community is on septic, are required as part of the permitting application process. The other thing that people have talked about is enforcement. And I would like to think that with the income from our short-term rental properties, that the club, or with conjunction, however, hire a full-time enforcement person, because it's very little good for you to call John or me or a member of the zoning district or Ron at midnight on Saturday when they can't sleep. They need to be able to call some part-time sheriff's deputy who can and will, and this is happening all over the country, evict people that cannot and will not behave. Now, people talk about, I'm going to move on to another thing, this business about X number of lots, and if we don't let short-term rentals go ahead, these lot owners will never buy and build up here. I would like to know what percentage of lot owners live in town. They have this membership lot strictly for entree into the club. If we want the club to grow and prosper, all new purchasers should be owners that live here or are going to use it, because this bleed in of non-permitted people that are coming in here, and I know you've done everything you can think to do to stop it, is continuing to be a problem. So that's what I have to say. Septic permits, and don't worry about the lot owners.
Thank you very much.
I just have one question for everyone. Do we want a private club, or do we want a public club that anybody can move in and anybody can do whatever they want to? I moved here and I joined because it was a private club. And I think that's the choice we have to make. Do you want private or do you want public?
I don't want to start an uproar. Libby Gray. I have a rental on both sides of me. I know what the problems are. I've had people up at 3 in the morning. I've had 12 packs of beer thrown all over the backyard next door to me. But one of the biggest concerns I have is several men came and brought canisters in and shut down the whole house next door to me. And every window, every shade was closed. And then the last they were there, they opened the whole thing up. I assumed they cooked meth, so I think properties need to be tested for meth if they're going to be rented, because these people weren't a problem. They didn't make any noise, nothing, but it was very fishy. It's kind of scary, honestly. We then had a family of 4 generations who had rented from Hummingbird another place, but the water went out, and so they moved them next door to me, and there were like 12 people. That house is supposed to be limited to 6. I don't know why they did that, but I didn't complain, but the people across the street complained. These people never mow their yard. We mowed it for them several summers, and then we finally told her we're gonna complain about her, because we just don't want to be ugly to people who have rentals. I mean, it's okay with me, but I didn't know who to call. I didn't get any information about who to call. So if you don't have a rental next door to you, you may not really understand that it can be overwhelming for, a couple that goes to bed at 9 and has a bunch of people next door up till 3 o'clock screaming and yelling, and you don't know who to call. I honestly didn't, because when I moved in, I guess they already had the rental agreement. So I hope we can if we can't get rid of short-term rentals, I'd really like to see there be some way to enforce and everybody absolutely know who that is and who to call, because we've had lovely people stay next door to us for 6 weeks at a time. But the short-term rentals have been more than problematic very, very often. And I wish that weren't true. I wish that you could make everybody happy. But when you have a rental on either side of you, it's not fun. I live at 1414 High Mesa Road.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Robert Saffer. I go by Rob. And sometimes I take exception to the expression when somebody says, I've been robbed, okay? So I say I prefer cheated. But the same thing with short-term rentals. There's 2 sides to this. We have a one-bedroom apartment that's attached to our house. We don't rent it when we're not home. We're always there. It usually rents to couples that are up for a weekend. So, and all of our neighbors know about it that are full-time. So I just wanted to give the other situation, and just like, let's say there's 10 black dogs in the neighborhood, 2 pit bulls, a German Shepherd, 3 Chihuahuas, and 4 poodles, okay? The pit bull and German Shepherd went and mauled somebody. Do we kill all 10 of the dogs? No. You would legislate. We're clever people. Let the community help you come up with, if I rent a boat or I rent, well, sometimes when I rented a motel room, we have a small dog. We have to leave a deposit, and that deposit gets taken if there's an issue. I think we should do that with short-term rentals. I also think that they should be limited in size. The 7-bedroom thing is obviously open to large parties and bad behavior. Let's take care of the bad behavior. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, my name is Charles Scott. I'm a member. Oh. Oh. Sorry about that. I've been asked to read a statement from one of the board members who couldn't make it. Am I allowed to do that? Would that be okay? Okay. So, let me put my glasses on. This board member, I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm here to talk as a property owner, even though he could. Oh, Scott Miller. And I'm a property owner, and that's what I want to speak to today as a property owner, not a board member. I own a house and 2 lots in Alto. I've been a realtor here since 1985. I have sold a lot of property in Alto and Lincoln County, probably more than most. That being said, I don't want to ever see anything that hurts Alto, hurts our club, or hurts our ability to live here in a nice community. I do not believe the rentals has done as much damage as a lot of people state. However, I am privy to the fact that I understand that some homeowners have had renters that have been here that have been very unruly, out of control, and sheriffs need to be called in that instance. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. Sometimes I know who to call, sometimes I don't. There are many owners that have family and friends that rent in Alto. Of course, I'm repeating what some other people have said. In the community, a lot of those come up to see the community to see what it's like. They want to witness a club. They want to come with a member for dinner. They want to play golf. They want to enjoy a concert. I have sold many homes over the years to people who have come and rented for a weekend or a week before they bought. My office, Pinnacle Real Estate, has a short-term rental group. I manage that with my wife, Melissa. One thing we like and appreciate that you're doing is trying to control and regulate. We feel that property managers that are here try to do that. If I make call 2 in the morning, some people here know I've been to their home. Come to find out it wasn't my property at all, it was another company's property. I still went, made the effort to go to that home where the guests are being unruly or loud, and got them to calm down. The average short-term rental profile, this is according to the National Association of Realtors, has a much higher income profile than a long-term renter. Long-term renters typically rent long-term because of the fact that they can't afford to rent a short-term and or buy a home. This information is per the Realtors Association of Realtors. I very strongly believe that we do not have a huge issue of renters causing problems. I have not seen any hard data to support that this is out of control, even though he has mentioned in his letter that he has people told him that they've had some issues. The few complaints that I'm aware of, I understand there are 3 in 2022. Those may have been self-managed. I think that the properties for rent should be managed by a professional company, and that all properties need to have a small sign or some way of notifying neighbors around them, the community, that that's what that is and who to call if there's an issue. The club could have a link on their website showing all the rental properties, who manages them, who the contact phone number is, how to get a hold of them, and who to call if there's a problem. We have personally lost 9 sales in our office in the last month since the first email went out about this conversation. We've lost 9 sales since then, and to that effect, transfer fees of $135,000 was not recognized. This is just in my office. I feel that there are other offices who have lost sales as well. There have been comments made that the STRs are negatively affecting value. From my perspective, the loss of the sales of 9 homes plus transfer fees is what's pretty negative to the club. There are roughly 100 rental properties, maybe a little more, in Alto that are permitted. The average rental days in Ruidoso is 89 nights a year per home. That's the average. If we took a conservative estimate of 60 nights per year here with the 100 rentals, that's over 6,000 nights rented. You'd mentioned 50 complaints. We've heard of 3. So that's where we feel regulation, enforcement can really mitigate that. Alto sales prices have continued to increase year after year, as well as the price per square foot for the number of high-end homes that are selling. I've heard that the board or some people on the board or communications that property values are going down, sales values are going down because of short terms. So here's some numbers. There were 12 homes sold over $700,000 in 2019. 5 of those were over $1 million. There were 29 homes sold over $700,000 in 2020. 12 of those were over $1 million. There were 45 homes sold over $700,000 in 2021. 16 of those were over $1 million. There were 51 homes sold over $700,000 in 2022. 27 of those homes were over $1 million. Obviously, these comments that the short-term rentals is hurting our values doesn't seem to be correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Scott ran the numbers on Alto only. Yes, sir. And even well, I'm not even going to say that because I don't feel that's appropriate, even though he wrote it. The people that are spending $300,000, $400,000, $600,000, $800,000 on their home that are renting it, there's been a comment that he heard that if you have to rent your home, you can't afford it. A lot of the buyers that we have are extremely well-to-do clients. Let me go back to his words. They are not, they're not the type of owners who would allow misconduct. They don't run it themselves, so that they have someone to go to, they have someone to manage, they have someone to follow the rules, and they won't allow their homes to be used or torn up. Again, I'm adamantly opposed to the proposed restrictions on the short-term rentals. We hope that we can find it all together, a solution. Sincerely, Scott Miller. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Martin Warren. I live on Crown Ridge Drive, and that was my wife up here a little bit earlier. I've got one question for the board or someone. Does the club benefit financially from short-term rentals other than these transfer fees that it seems like all the realtors benefit from? I'd like to find out if that information is available for anybody.
The club gets nothing.
The only way the club benefits is if the short-term rental is from a member of the club.
Right.
Non-members who rent are not allowed to use the club facilities. We've been trying to track down on that on the past couple of years. We only accept credit cards for someone who is accompanying a member, and we do not allow unaccompanied guests. So no, and that's what I believe will happen as short-term rentals increase. The ability of renters to use the club will not be allowed until it gets to be a critical mass where they try to vote and change the board of directors and allow this to become a club that's not a private club, a semi-private club, and I think that's the concern of some of us.
That's happening in a lot of places. And like I said, it seems to me like other than the transfer fees, the real estate industry is the one that's benefiting the most from all this.
Thank you very much. Catherine?
Hi, my name is Catherine McWilliams, and we are surrounded by rentals. I have a couple of questions. We've had incidences, and I'm not going to go into them. I called the management company that is over the homes, and I could either not get a hold of anyone, or it went to voicemail, or they weren't going to be available until the following week. There weren't things that needed to notify the sheriff's department, but it was kids on our property infringing on our area. We actually bought the lot next to us to prevent that, but they come onto our lot and they throw rocks and sticks at the deer and the horses. And on a couple of occasions when my husband's been out of town, I kind of don't feel very safe in my own home because our kitchen and our family area is pretty exposed unless you close the curtains. One of my big questions is, who do I call when there's 7 or 8 cars in the driveway and on the street and we can't get up and down our street? And who do I call to come and pick up all the beer bottles and the open trash that the people who rent leave behind that I can't get picked up?
Thank you, Catherine. I think right now, the 1994 covenants, which are now active, does not have any enforcement against short-term rentals. There's no regulations about short-term rentals. That's the zoning district's purview. And so I guess that would be one person to call. The sheriff is usually, the sheriff is usually who people have been told to call the sheriff. But the sheriff it doesn't seem to be a high priority for the sheriff to respond to those calls. So if we decide not to ban short-term rentals, then there'll have to be an enforcement mechanism, entity, if you will, a security/violations police force. We'll need to hire people. We'll need software support, maybe a vehicle. And the people that think that regulating short-term rentals is the answer, are they willing to vote for a dues increase in order to fund that operation? Because it would be.
I think that cost could be passed on to the property owners in question. My name is Mary Helen Jordan. I'm with Robert. I want to just do a little bit of clarification. This morning we actually renewed our permit for the next 2 years, just so everybody knows what the process is. And I was hoping one of our zoning delegates, oh good, come on, come do this, because as a member here, a full-time resident here, I am so assured at the process that we have to go through and other people go through, and there is a very powerful way that people can complain. I am so very sorry that there is a 7-bedroom home next to you that's being rented out. That is inappropriate. And that's the kind of thing that I think that we can address.
Keith Spaniel, I am actually the current chair and president of Alto Lake Special Zoning District. We are, just a couple things, we are voluntary, we're elected by the citizens here in Alto Lakes. We are a reactive, unfortunately not a proactive. We wait for complaints from the members to be brought to us, however they're brought, either through ACC, and then typically ACC, Maggie, or to the office, Maggie brings them over to us, we address it. That's how we've got the 4. Now, as far as the ones at Lincoln County, at the Sheriff's Department, we don't know about those. We don't follow up on those. As Ms. Jordan mentioned, there is a process in place. And we actually did meet this morning. We've got our next meeting. It's the typically first and third Thursdays of the month. Jim Evans, see you sitting over here, he was on the zoning back, 12, 15 years when they put that section regarding short-term rentals into the Alto Lake Special Zoning District ordinance. He was given a call, he called me in December, said he was given a call by the state's attorney general at that time, 12, 15 years ago, and was informed that it was not allowed to restrict. I also was told by Les Bailey earlier today, he told me that there was a legal opinion out there somewhere that was sent to the Alto Lake Special Zoning District in the past regarding short-term rental limitations, what is allowed, what is not allowed. I haven't either. And what we discussed was it was probably provided to zoning because it was a state agency to state agency. I called state's attorneys general before the meeting started. I'm trying to get that. And I'll make it available as soon as I get it. So we can look at that. But again, we do have a process in place. We do encourage the members, when you've got something that's critical, you've got to call the Sheriff's Department. But at the same time, let the club know the club has been good over the years bringing it over to zoning so that then zoning can address it. And when we have 3 complaints, what are we doing? We're pulling their permits. We pull permits from the owner, from that short-term rental. When we get it. We have not pulled any permits to my knowledge at this point because we have not had 3 complaints against a single property owner. So it's closing that loop. And like I said, hey, by all means, we only have 5 commission seats available, but you can come and join us for the meetings. Help us make it better. Like a lot of people have already said, there are problems going on, not just here in Alto, New Mexico, but in Fort Worth and around the world. And we're trying to figure this out. Come help us figure it out, by all means, to regulate it and get it where it needs to be. I did like the one comment about, how about a cap? And hopefully I'll get that legal opinion that says what we can and can't do, what is suggested we can do, and learn from others' experiences and try to make it better. But a lot of this right here, you're going to send out a vote for this ordinance change, and hopefully it gets to the point where we can get the 50% plus 1 to get some better ordinances on for those members who are under the current, the 93 ordinance. I'm going to talk about software first, host Granicus. How do we know people are in violation? And we talk about the cost of the permits. We're up to $900 every 2 years. It started out several years back. The permit was good for 5 years. 10, 12 years ago. They did it for 5 years because we didn't have the problem with people illegally unpermitting, without a permit, advertising on Craigslist, Airbnb, VRBO, all these sites. People have gotten smarter. The market has moved on it. And so we paid a check for $13,000, $14,000 last month for this software, this Granicus that has this. It's the same program that's used by Lincoln County and the Village of Ruidoso. They are not allowed. They have contractual obligations with those entities that cannot provide Freedom of Information Act and give us a list. Therefore, we have to pay them this $13,000. And that's why we've had to raise our permit costs to help offset that software. And then as far as the permitting process, you have to notify people within a 200 foot, from the corners, which the club had been real good about assisting the members coming in. Who are those people? But, just trying to get that so that they know who to send these notices out to. But what we're finding is, a permit that was given 3 years ago for 5 years, 4 years, whatever it was at that time, the adjoining members have changed. The adjoining lots have sold. Did that new person necessarily get a notice? Probably not. Come to us. We will let you know. Give me your address, Mr. Evan, and we'll let you know who's, within a 200 foot or maybe even a little bit more. We'll give you that information as well as who their contact information, who they have listed. But it sounds like we might need to try to run some tests on the reporting of calling the agent. Well, we know there's some preferred providers that we like working with. Thank you, Hummingbird Coast. Thank you, Pinnacle. Y'all do a good job with y'all's. We don't have any complaints. It's typically what we're finding is it's typically those who are doing it on their own, that are going through an evolve or someone like that. But like I said, by all means, come participate. Had to do a red tag last week, and for someone who's in violation. And had to take it to the point today where I had to put a notice from our lawyer, in their mailbox. So, by all means, please check your mailboxes because that notice because that's what people are taking us to, pushing back on our authority as a state agency. But we definitely appreciate your input. We appreciate your help on this for protecting our community. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. The window on the 3 violations, we haven't had it yet, probably a 12-month period. Pam, do you? 12-month period on the three violations in a 12-month period. And then another permit, they'd have to come apply again for a permit. It's going to, we'll revoke the permit. They'll have to come to apply again for the permit. And I want to introduce Pam Wilson. She is a commissioner. Short-term rentals are that's her lane. She works with Granicus. She's got the access to the software. She, on a volunteer basis, and that's why I've deferred to her for the answer to your question. 3 complaints in a 12-month period. If they come to the club, and that's where the club has the software to track, several years ago, the club started doing this because they can track it, Jonas, and help us out because they've got the software, they've got the property owners, all the communication information that we don't have. We're not going to create a double system for it. But going to the club, it'll be tracked there, and then, like I say, they bring it over to us. Exactly. You can go into Sidwell Portico, which is a Lincoln County Tax Assessor Appraiser's software that they're migrating over to. They weren't on Tainted, but the Sidwell Portico, and you can go and drill down. I can show you your property on the phone after this if you want. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Higgins. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. The village has 1 or 2 full-time employees that focus on short-term rentals for the village. Larger footprint, but still they have full-time that are doing that. Like I say, over the years, the club has evolved to where they've utilized some of their resources to help us oversee and try to help manage this animal as well. Well, okay, we discussed this morning in the special zoning district, and regarding the proposed covenants that were on the web, we had some concerns with the fences as worded in your covenants as opposed to our ordinance. It goes contrary to. And for that and several other reasons, we cannot endorse the proposed unified covenants as proposed right now, due to the fences, the allowance of businesses and homes, the Firewise. We feel that that's over and above the National Forest Services. We took our ordinances in November and we took out a page and a half relating to irrigation, because when Jim Abbott might have put that in there 15, 20 years ago, Alto Lakes Water and Sanitation District was not to where they are with their restrictions on irrigation. And we felt it better for us just to remove it altogether, that page and a half on irrigation, because as soon as they change theirs, well, then I have to catch it and make sure mine's... We just cut it down to a paragraph and a hyperlink to their website that shows where they allow bubbler systems for drip irrigation, for establishing growth, and remove that. So with the Firewise, to delegate to a subject matter expert, National Forest Service, I had another member call me on that last week about some concerns up on properties up front and the steepness of the slopes. But they said that they contacted Davis Dalton, who actually helped them out with it, and complimented you on that. Also, that these ordinances that you're proposing, or the covenants you're proposing, does not address all. It's only the limited memberships that are under the current, and then the short-term rentals, the comments that are coming up today. But again, Dalton, I appreciate y'all having this meeting and trying to get it to a point where it'll pass.
Keith, let me speak to the interaction between the covenants and the zoning board. The covenants are a contract between landowners, and to the extent that the covenants enact restrictions that are more restrictive than the governmental agencies, those are allowed. I don't know which you're talking about, where the differences are in the covenants, and I think zoning and the covenants commission can work that out. This came up 4 years ago, you might even been involved, when we tried to do the 2018 covenants. At that time, there's a discrepancy between zoning and the covenants on the setbacks. We sent this to our lawyer, I think actually Eric did, Richard Hawthorne at that time, and he came back and said, the setbacks in your covenants control because you've got a private contract between landowners, and you can do restrictions more restrictive than the government agency. So I just want to clarify where we're at. Less restrictive we can't do, more restrictive we can.
Okay, yes. Any other questions?
Thank you, Keith.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Millicent Ballack, And my husband, John May, and I have been homeowners here in Alto Lakes for well over 10 years now. And I didn't come here to speak today. I came here to learn, and I have great empathy for those folks who have had frustrations with short-term rentals. I highly support more regulation rather than outlawing. But I really am up here to correct some misinformation. We are remodeling the 7-bedroom house, full transparency, that has been maligned today. And it's that old game of rumor that starts with one little bit of misinformation building to something else. First of all, it was a house that's been a 7-bedroom house since 1994. It was sitting on Deer Park Drive, empty and vacant, and slowly decaying as a house will. And my husband, who's a very, very gifted construction designer, said, let's take that on as a project and bring it back to life. We've been working night and day since January of last year to do that. We do not intend, nor is it a short-term rental. I don't know who started that rumor today, but I want to correct it. It is not a short-term rental. It is a house that is being renovated and will be on the market this spring, and I would invite all of you to come look at it because it's going to be gorgeous, and you can be the owner. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you've done. I know it takes a lot, and we really need to improve the covenants. That's for sure. My name is Ed Buck. My wife and I have lived here for 22 years. I know that it's necessary to, when you transfer real estate, to properly record it with the clerk, the county clerk. You have to have it notarized. And I saw it on your screen that when we vote on amendments, the signatures, we have to have signatures of all the owners according to the last court decision. But it doesn't say anything about it, those signatures being notarized. It's not mentioned in the draft. So you might like to look at that, just to notify the members that when they vote, they need to have their signatures notarized. So when the votes come in, they'll be legal. Great, that's great. Well, I saw on your screen that it...
Yeah, but in Article 12 of the actual covenants document, it shows that they have to be notarized. And when this comes out for a vote, that's going to be prominently delineated, and the club is going to have notaries around in various places, like in here at concert, in the dining room, in the office, so that people can vote and get notarized right on the spot. But of course, if you want to do it at your home in Texas or wherever, and have it notarized there, well, John thinks you need a New Mexico notary. I thought notarized was notarized, but.
You need a New Mexico, is that right, John? Okay. So, in regard to the easement, the draft requires that all of the property owners give an easement, a non-exclusive easement And it does provide some due process about a hearing and et cetera, and I appreciate that. But it's an encumbrance on our title, and it's very, very broad. I think maybe a little too broad. And I really don't think an easement is required, because I think the Architectural Control Committee has enough authority already in the bylaws to enforce all the covenants. So instead of us having an extra encumbrance on our title, I just think we should let the Architectural Control Committee do that. You may have some good reasons for that.
Well, sir, let me just say that the rationale was so that the club could thoroughly investigate suppose a violation is noticed from the street. Well, you know you have a violation, but you don't know the extent of it unless you can walk around and look behind the house. And then if it eventually gets to the point after notification and verification and a 30-day waiting period and nothing's happening and the owner's uncooperative, that the club could then go on the property and like cut down the dead tree or haul out the log or whatever. But there has been a lot of comment in regards to an easement.
That's right.
And the committee was discussing that issue today. And we did feel that maybe an easement was a little too strong of a way to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, perhaps with different language, not easement language,
Right.
we could accomplish the same thing. And I think that the mood of the committee was that we would likely change that.
That's good to
that part.
hear. You might even just give the Architectural Control Committee a little more leeway, just a little more. Yes, that's what I was thinking, John. That's right. I think a license would be better.
I think that change is going to go through.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Anything else?
The third question,
Okay.
I have a question about the survey. I think that's a great idea, so everybody can contribute. Is it just going to be a questionnaire with yes and no answers, or will you invite written comments?
I don't think the final form is yet done, but I think there's been like more than ample opportunity to comment. I think with that survey, a yes or no question or maybe a multiple choice, along with some information about both sides of that issue, what we want to know is, well, what do the members want to do?
I think it's what we want to know.
The members, right, what the members want to do.
I think the members want to know what the members want to do. That's the purpose of my question. If you have just yes, no, check the box, and you can limit what you get. So I would like to encourage you to invite written comments and then publish and share them with the general membership in plenty of time for us to review those comments before we vote. That's my request.
I understand. I'm just thinking about the logistics of it.
Yeah.
So
well, just
maybe we'll vote in 2024.
I heard that you were going to wait. I heard you were going to wait until send it out with the ballots for the election.
I've been talking to some people about maybe sending it out before then.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Charlie Barron. I'm a new full-time resident here, and I'm looking forward to spending a lot of years here. One comment on the covenant changes. I'd like to see the penalties proportionate to the issue. I think foreclosure is a huge overkill for any issue that you're going to have. I've read too many news accounts where HOAs have grossly exceeded anything reasonable relative to foreclosure action on homeowners. There's been a lot of abuse of that. And so that's a comment on there. And in terms of proportionality, I'd like to ask you to think about the non-resident owners that may have issues that you need to resolve. In that regard, I think 30 days is too short a time period to give them an opportunity to effectively engage on trying to correct that. Right now, it's taken me 10 days to receive mail from anywhere. So 10 days out of 30 days from when you send out a notice doesn't leave a lot of time. Just think about that part of it, if you would. I'd like to follow up also on the fire prevention component of the changes. The zoning official mentioned that your proposed fire prevention regulations are above and beyond whatever reference he had. I have a concern about that. My lot is extremely steep. And I hadn't lived here long enough to understand the natural vegetation that I'm going to have. That vegetation is important to my lot to control erosion. If I cut it to 4 inches, and I don't know how often I'd have to try to mow it to keep it at 4 inches, that's going to kill the natural vegetation that's on there. I'm not going to have any erosion protection. So there's a wide variety of topography in the community. And again, I haven't lived here long enough to know what the reasonable and necessary provisions are to get insurance coverage. But that's the thing that I have a concern about in there. If you trim the trees up, as you're proposing, and I had one of the foresters in the area come and try to educate me a little bit about my property. His comment was that the flame height in a fire is 3 times the height of the vegetation. If you're trimming the tall vegetation to 8 feet or above, a foot of vegetation on the ground doesn't seem to me like it's going to represent a major hazard. But that's covered by experts. I'm not an expert, but that's a concern that I have. The other question I have about the fire protection stuff, if there is a uniform standard that you're trying to achieve in the condition of the properties, I was here in the fall, vegetation dies roughly after the first freeze. That's roughly when the pine needles come down. So if you're talking about a period from, say, November 1st to the end of the year, where you're really trying to get the properties cleaned up, is there enough contract labor available in the area to service the number of lots that this regulation is covering? And if that is the standard that you're trying to achieve, would it be done more effectively if the community hired a contractor to do it, and that was incorporated in the dues structure that we all pay? Those are the questions that I have.
Okay, I'll try to answer some of that from the Firewise standpoint. Yes, from the standpoint of contractors, there is a limited number. The club has hired me to come in and try to get these contractors. There's 16 contractors on the webpage now. I've talked to each one of those. And there is a discussion with the ACC this morning, coming out a few things to try to eliminate some of the details having to work on this pine needles and things. And to answer what you're saying, create that barrier in there. And with the 94 covenants, they don't cover us enough to go in That's where the new covenants would come up to create that barrier that we need. And by doing this, trying to work with the property owners to where we can create that with a little better understanding of it. And after this meeting, I'd like to meet with you and get your name and telephone number and set up a time to where I could come out and visit with you and see what, come up with some understanding on the lot itself, which that's what I'm doing a lot going on now. And people that doesn't know where their property is, I'm marking the property for them. So I understand what you're saying. And
come look at mine, because I think I've done an excellent job so far.
Okay.
Damn near kill me.
The ones I've looked at is...
I've made 20 trips to the trash dump, hauling pine needles and whatnot.
But we appreciate what you've done.
But the overall question about the condition that you're trying to achieve and the ability of homeowners to comply with that, most of us aren't going to be able to do it ourselves. Most of us are going to be looking for contractor help to accomplish that.
Yeah, the dream or the ideal goal is if we to also satisfy the insurance companies, if we can come through and create a true fire-wise community, then the forest department has multiple million-dollar grants that you can obtain to an ideal situation if to like to come into is either multiple contractors or contractors that takes the whole thing every year and cleans it to fire-wise, and the grants, multi-million-dollar grants covers it. That's the goal. That's the goal we're trying to go to.
But even to do that, you've got to have a labor force that's able to actually accomplish the work. And it's not clear to me that that labor force exists.
Yeah,
anyway,
the key...
that area to me needs some more clarification as you present it to us. That's what I would really ask you to do, is work on trying to clarify that.
Still talking to other contractors. The key on the grants is, the key word is, what do you have to prove it? Make sure it's continued, clean it up from year to year. But we've got to get it there, and then that's where these new covenants are coming in, where we can maintain it from year to year, and that's the key. What some of the grants, we looked at the wording on that to try to convert the new covenants to help improve a grant possibility.
So if there's a one-time fee that we've got to pay to get it cleaned up to those standards, that's one of the options that you could present to the membership as a way to handle it. Anyway, I think that needs some more work and some better clarification to us, so we really understand how this functions at a practical level.
Thank you, sir.
That's my request.
Okay, if I could respond to some of that myself. Number one, grass does not have to be kept at 4-inch height. Grass doesn't have to be mowed but once a year. If all you want to do is comply with the covenants, once a year between the middle of September until the December 31st, then you're in compliance. There's one area where 4-inch height is recommended, and that is underneath trees. If you trim the ladder fuel up and you've got 3-foot grass underneath it, then you can still reach the lower branches of the tree if the flames are 3 times the height of the vegetation. But the only time that 4 inches comes into play is underneath the canopy of a tree. Well, then you need to thin, or you need to weed eat it. Now, there's been a question about steep lots. We initially put in the covenants that if it was too steep to be safe or practical to mow it or to rake the needles and pine cones, then you didn't have to. And then the question came up, okay, well, what's steep? What's too steep? What's not too steep? So Mr. Mason and I did some field work, and we got a tape measure and a level, and we started measuring slopes of lots.
And it seemed to us that if the lot was steep as 6 and 12, or a 45-degree angle is another way to say that, that's too steep to safely do it. But if it's less than that, we thought we personally could do it, so we didn't see why a contractor couldn't be able to handle that lot. But the only time that we were recommending at 4 inches is underneath trees. If it's not underneath trees, the typical is 12 inches. And I'm not an expert either. And forestry experts are experts on forests. And a community like this is a community in a forest. It's an urban wild interface. But to prevent this whole place from catching on fire, it might need to be a little more stringent than what a forester would say is appropriate for a forest. So that's why some of this is a little more stringent maybe, especially under trees. And the other thing was about foreclosure. That's an absolutely last resort. The last thing this club wants to do is foreclose on anybody's property. And we work with people. We bend over backwards not to have to go to that step, but I don't think we should remove it as an option. Okay, next question.
I'm J.R. Can. We've been members here for a little more than 19 years now. We share the same concerns that have been expressed around rentals, around eliminating short-term rentals, and around the steep slope issues, and we've expressed those to you in writing already, so I won't go back through all that. But one issue that I don't think is addressed is around the club's right to come on your property. The club has set itself up as judge and jury. If the landowner disagrees there's an issue and the club decides there is, then the club can send contractors or whomever in. And so the question I've got is, how do you protect the lot owner from liabilities when you do that? The club is protected in their contract, probably. The landowner is going to get sued when your contractor gets hurt or causes damage. How do you protect us? Thank you.
Okay. No, but 2 hours is probably long enough. In regards, what we would like for people to do is get their own contractors to take care of their lots. The club does not want to be put in the position of having to do it. But fire-wise is one thing that if everybody doesn't do it, we might as well not do it, because it will not prevent the fires nearly as effectively as if everybody removes the fuel. So when we use a contractor, they're insured, they're bonded. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know if that protects the homeowner or not. But if there's a question about whether there's a violation of the covenant or not, if the ACC says there is and the lot owner disagrees, you can request a hearing. It says that right on the notification that if you disagree, call the ACC office and get on the schedule for a hearing. And you can discuss it with the ACC. That should probably resolve the problem. But I suppose if not, how do most people solve those problems around here?
You get a neutral arbiter and decide. You don't let the club make the final decision.
A neutral offer?
Arbiter.
Arbiter. So you think there should be an option for arbitrage?
There's lots of ways to do that. You could get a court order. You could do an arbitration. You could do one where the loser pays. There's lots of ways to handle that. But right now, the club is the judge, the jury, and the final decision.
Well, I think that's,
I respectfully disagree.
okay, so will I. The club is not the judge and the jury. The covenants are, please, if you want the floor, stand up the mic when it's your turn. Sir?
I'll be a mediator right now. My name is Scott Maynard. I've been a member here for 38 years. My dad was a member, oh my gosh, 55 years. One of the first members here. So I've seen a lot of growth, a lot of things happening in this town and up at the club. I've managed properties, I've owned properties, rentals, short terms. I've managed short-term rentals within Alto. And they finally switched from short-term to monthlies and seasonals, with people coming in from California, wherever, that wanted to get away because they were tired of their place just getting demolished. Now, were all these incidents and reports, were they reported to the club? No. The owner of the place called me, hey Scott, what's going on here? And I'd have to go take care of business. And I would have to either call the police or get things done. And they both went to monthlies and, like I said, seasonals. And they are so happy they did. I've got a fourplex, basically. I used to do short terms, and I got tired of everything that was going on. And it was just, I couldn't handle it anymore. So I went to monthlies. And now what's going on with our village and around town, with our community and our workforce. And we need to decide whether we're a family and we'll take care of families. I like the idea, hey, if you got a place here and it's only 3-bedroom, but you got family coming in, hey, let's have a board or somewhere in the club where a registry, hey, I have my house available to open it up to help your family as far as rent goes. But then we know the people that are coming into our village, okay? This is a country club. What is a country club? Look at the definition, it's private. It's private membership, it's private golf, it's private, everything we do is private. We come up here to get away and to keep our peace. Okay, I've been out here and I've watched the same thing, the speeding. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're members or if they're VRBO people or who they are. And they're speeding. I've been passed right here on High Mesa Drive. Come on, who needs to pass me? Okay, I want the safety of the people in the community in this town, in our little village here, to be safe. If a mom wants to be on a stroller and walk her baby, great, she doesn't have to worry about a bunch of partying 5-8 or something, all drunk coming up and down the roads and streets. Okay? There's safety. We have to think about the safety of our club and our members and the old folks. Okay? Hey, you know, my dad was there. Golf carts, we drive golf carts, so we got to take care of them. Okay? I'm glad we're on the fire issue, okay? Right down the road. Ski Run Road, Eagle Creek condos. Anybody know those places? All right. How about that condo that burnt down just this year? 4 units. I got evacuated. Okay? 4 units burned down. You want to talk about lawsuits and things that's going on right now? Okay, who's going to be responsible? Your short-term rental when there's a fire in there, and it's not if, it's when. Because they party. They do drugs, they do everything, they have fires, they don't abide rules. They don't abide. There's gonna be a fire, and what happens if it's your house that burns down, or your house, and the next door neighbor, and maybe it takes 10 out. Okay, who's gonna sue who to sue who to sue who? That's one of my biggest concerns, is because I know what goes on inside these places. But there's gotta be some type of happy medium, somehow, to work things out. One thing I just want to help people coming into this town that they can't find housing, they can't buy a house in Alto. They want to move their business here, their family here, but they can't because the housing, I don't know the numbers, but they're buying up the houses and they're turning them into VRBOs. And that's not what a country club is a VRBO vacation place. It reduces the local tax revenue with the hosts avoid paying the taxes on the rental income. It means local communities miss out on the tax revenue that would have received if those guests stay in hotels. You know, and I'm going to be doing a big thing with our village too, because it's got a big problem right now. We don't have the workforce. Disruptive visitors affects the permanent residents, their quality of life, the litter, the trash. You guys heard everything today, illegal parking. People being forced to move because of the rental prices increasing. It decreases your property value. Let's say you got a nice home, $700,000 home. But hey, next door it's the biggest VRBO in Alto, and they have more parties. You think you're going to be able to sell that home? No, I've seen it in other cities. I've seen it in San Francisco when I lived there. I've seen it in Long Island, New York, different places. It's gotten bad. Alto is family oriented. And I know there's a lot of young people or people moving in here that want to do, they want to make money. They want to go buy a house. But we got people buying the house for the wrong reason in a country club. You come here to retire, relax, have peace, quiet, bring your families, that your families can come and gather and do things. But the mindset of like, oh, I'm going to buy this place and I'm going to turn it into VRBO and start making lots of money. We're losing our inventory on the houses because they're going to the VRBOs. One thing I think it'd be kind of cool. Let's say you do pass something short term, but you got to come up with something. Number one, the club has to know about it. Who is renting? Does the club have a list of every VRBO in Alto? Why not? Why not? What do you mean you can't get it? Everybody that has a property and they're renting it at a VRBO, it needs to be on a register in our office. Maybe we start our own pro management rental team out of Alto. Maybe you start our own little company. It all goes through. Now that way the club can make money. The club can make money. The club can hire the cleaning staff crew. Okay? You're talking about a business where the club could start a new business. If we're going to do something, do it right. Yeah, they could be their own property management, but everybody that's in here, if they're going to rent their place, it needs to be registered, and they need to know, and the neighbors need to know, and somehow then you're going to have to get along with your neighbor. Let's say you don't want it, and your neighbor has it. Man, I don't know about that. That's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a real tough one, because everybody's going to have to decide on that. And I know what disturbances are and parties are. I live it every day in my business. What's that? Oh yeah, and it might have been them speeding up and down the roads, but yeah. But I just, in all things though, everybody's got to somehow get on board and just come up with something, come up with a happy medium of something, but you gotta weigh the highs and lows and everything. And it takes time because a lot of people get into stuff and they've never done it before, and then it's like boom. Once your house gets destroyed, and I don't know does somebody give you $2,000 as a deposit? What happens if your damage is $10,000? Or they left a toilet running or this. We got water issues. And then then you're in a lot of trouble. But the fire thing is the one that really, because it happened right next door to me.
Thank you very much.
And that was stuff. Thank you.
Excellent comments. Thank you very much. And thank everybody for coming today. We're going to bring this to an end. Thank you all for coming, all the comments that came online. We're looking at everything. We've reviewed a lot of them already, but we still have work to do. Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's going to be more meetings like this. There will be several more before we ever get to a vote. You want to say something?
First of all, it's impressive to me that we have the kind of turnout that we had today. Thank you for caring. A lot of times in clubs, there's nothing but apathy. And then everybody after the fact starts crying about, well, wow. Thank you for being part of the process. I'm sorry for anybody who didn't get a chance to talk tonight. You'll get your chance. We'll have more of these. Don't forget, I got free food over there. Is that why you're all here, or are you really interested in the process? But there's food over there for you. The bar's open. Happy hour prices. Thank you once again. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, that's yeah.